Hi, I would like to discuss about the book that I chose for this assignment. And the book that I chose is called Learning to See. It's teaching American Sign Language as a second language. And here's the fabulous cover. And I was scouting on Amazon.com, and this is the book I had found. It's provided by Gallaudet University. If you're a little bit familiar with Gallaudet University, it's a university that is particularly uh, it's a deaf liberal arts college, and this Gallaudet provides many wonderful resources from deaf education to art programs, and they even host interpreting classes at Gallaudet University for bachelors as well as masters. Um, so a little bit about the book. It helps learning to see, teaching American Sign Language as a second language is one of the few books that is available for uh, new uh, and old ASL instructors. And I thought this book was wonderful because it provided uh, program design as well as ASL curriculum design and outline for what your classroom should teach. I would like to actually go over the ASL curriculum design and outline. I made a couple of notes of what I thought this book really did a really good job on. Uh, for one, part of the ASL curriculum design and outlet talks about the second language approach and how teachers should how they will teach ASL. Many teachers who are teaching ASL are hearing. And what I mean by that, they grew up hearing and they learned ASL as most second language. It's rare that we have teachers who are deaf who teach ASL. And another approach that the book talks about is approaching teaching ASL and how students come to the classroom, many knowing the second language already under their belt, and but there is a large amount of students who've taken ASL who have not had taken a foreign language previously. Um, and It also talks about how students are come into classrooms, and there's even some cases where students are coming into classrooms with uh, I'm sorry, uh, students come into classroom and what they need to have in order to uh, learn. Another I'm sorry, what I mean when other students are coming into classroom, and the book talks about how it's important to recognize other students who have taken another language and the ones who have gotten help. Okay, the teaching strategies of this book includes how to introduce the language, the culture, and it's important for the teachers to understand that it's their duty to teach not only the language, but the grammar, the syntax, and the culture aspects of the culture that follows ASL. And many people don't understand who are new to the language. They don't understand that ASL has a deaf community and has deaf culture behind it. And so it's definitely a very important thing for teachers to teach. And then, okay, this actually goes on to the next same similar process. Sorry, same similar topic, which is course on deaf culture. And many of these teachers who are teaching ASL, majority of them are hearing, and they've learned about deaf culture for many, many years. Some are actively involved with the deaf culture. And it's a rare occasion to find, sorry, it's rare to find a teacher who is actually born deaf, capital D deaf. Uh, when I mean capital D deaf is we're culturally strong. And they are teaching students what it means uh, uh, to be culturally deaf compared to medically the word deaf. And this is also a topic that the book discusses, which I knew about, but it makes a lot more sense. Is that a lot of teachers who are hearing, they definitely do get backlash from the deaf community uh, when when they are required to teach about deaf culture. And to a point, I do understand because a lot of these hearing teachers grew up not in a deaf environment or in a deaf household. And the way that the deaf community views us, a lot of them sees that we didn't struggle, especially to fight this oppression from the hearing society of what is how should we learn, I mean how they should not only learn but how they should function medically. And that is still a big issue. uh, and that's why a lot of people in the deaf community will feel resilient to their hearing peers, and they will tell you straight to your face that you are not uh, it's not your place to be teaching deaf culture. But it goes into a little bit of that, and then it continues talking about uh, now it goes into evaluation and measurements and how teachers should uh, teach the material, and how to make sure that the students will effectively learn the material. And like I said, the teacher's job is to teach not only ASL, but the grammar, the syntax, and the linguistics of the language. And a lot of that is what makes ASL a difficult language to learn. And some students can grasp it real quickly. It's mostly the students who have previously learned another language, but there's students who do know how, ASL and pick it up really quickly. Um, and then it also talks about testing expressive and receptive ASL skills and how do teachers do that. Teachers uh, use a testing expressive and receptive ASL skills through either quarterly videos presented from students, and students will be given a dialogue to uh, practice with their teachers and as well as their own, and use those skills and make a video. And a lot of these videos are either on our laptop or posted on YouTube. And For my ASL 1 class, we did a couple of these, and they uh, it was more of like a midterm because I had several. They because it was level 1, they did my name is, I go to school where, I go, my major is what, um, I grew up in what city, and I like to do this activity. I do not like to do this activity. Why? What is it? I'm sorry, not why, but you get the idea. They did several prompts, and we did it every couple of weeks. We started small with these projects. Like simply, like in the beginning, you did my hi, my name is, and then also I live where I'm a student, and then it grew from there. And so at the end of the semester, students were able to compare and show, uh, see their videos and how they progress from there. And the teacher definitely commented and helped students with their uh, signs and how they can improve, which I thought was really neat, because even though it was a smaller class, you definitely got that one-on-one feel. And it's definitely important to teach students not only how to use that sign production right, signs correctly, but to also emphasize that students need to practice their grammar, which includes facial expressions, as well as conveying a space and your pronouns. I meant he, she, him. Sorry, he. I'm sorry. This area represents a person, so it will be he or she or their or his or hers. It's just how you I'm gonna present that uh, topic and how to convey it to the students of using it correctly. And also, this goes along with test written expressive, sorry, testing expressive and receptive ASL skills. There is usually a written uh, test in ASL classrooms. And we did a couple of these. We also did it like testing the expressive and receptive ASL skills, where every couple of weeks students are tested on how they interpret the prompt that's given to them. The instructor would be telling them a story using sign language to uh, tell them a story of a person, and it's the job of the student to write down the story to the best of their abilities. And the teacher would look at it to make sure the prompt is correct. Um, I noticed a lot of my students did a really good job when I was a teacher assistant at Radford University. Um, and another thing about written tests in ASL classroom, it wasn't always receptive and expressive ASL skills. It was majority of it, but there was a little bit. It was about 25% of the classroom test would be deaf culture, and the sorry, the written tests also refresh students about deaf culture and what they are to expect. And I thought that was a good way, especially for our final. There was a midterm, I'm sorry, not a midterm, excuse me, a test that showed questions that might relate to deaf culture and how students need to approach things in deaf culture. Um, and it's definitely something that should stick with the students, especially going into environment where you are basically a guest. Um, and the last topic is instructional materials such as textbooks, videotapes, objects, pictures, flashcards, and computers. We don't have videotapes anymore, but some of the best materials was on videotapes and they have now been converted. Thank you to Gallaudet University. Um, but textbooks such as this one, Learning to See, and uh, ASL level classroom textbooks. And a lot of textbooks that is now being developed are more creative created by deaf professors as well as companies that uh, work uh, closely to the deaf community. And a lot of textbooks that we have now that we're looking to eventually, what was it? Not to eventually take away, but to improve our older textbooks. But some of them are the grammar and the wording is really old. When I say really old, it's 1980s. And that can be hard for a student to learn from because uh, ASL is a forever changing language, and it's really hard, especially if someone is using an older style of sign language. Uh, and sometimes they can throw off people. So it's always important to use up to date text from schools as well as materials such as videos, flashcards, and online resources. I'm not saying that all material from the 1980s is absolutely horrid. It is absolutely wonderful. And as a student, uh, I took ASL 3, excuse me. I took ASL 3 and 4, and I used older books, and they were from the 1980s. And it was definitely because it was harder material, but that style stuck with me. But as an ASL teacher, I think it's definitely a good idea to use more text from newer information. But you are running to the problem that with a lot of these textbooks that are being developed, whether they are correct um, or just simply how much it is to put in your classroom, because sorry, just having Signing Naturally Level 1 textbook for college course classes, you are running about $93 uh, per book. Um, I'm not, it's a really great source, but they are definitely pricey. And then one thing I did notice was the book talks about the program design and what you should recognize when teaching ASL. For example, who are the learners and why are they studying? A lot of students who come into the classroom are students who are interested in ASL, and a lot of them come into class with the general idea that, hey, ASL is not hard, you're just throwing some signs. But in fact, that a lot of students are coming into class not knowing the dynamics of the language, and a lot of students may get frustrated because you have that they are learning grammar, the syntax, um, the linguistics of the language, as well as even the culture and history. But a lot of students are, especially a few of the many students that I had in my classroom as a teacher assistant at Radford University, a lot of them went on to ASL Level 2, and they are really enjoying the language as I meant um, really much. And it was actually a really nice sight to see that students were engaged not only with the language but participating in ASL language lab, where students came out to practice um, their signing skills. And then a lot of students, like I said, came out to learn sign language because sometimes it's not offered in many colleges as well as high schools. Um, And then another thing was what resources are available, including teaching material and personal material. And as a teacher assistant at Radford University, I was lucky enough to have a lot of these materials provided for me, not only from the school bookstore, but from my professor, uh, Miss Tracy Nielsen. And she's been in the field for a very long time, and she taught at Radford for about 5 years, but she's a deaf teacher, med step deaf instructor, where she teaches deaf education, but she's not deaf herself. So she actually went to Gallaudet University herself, and she brought back a lot of material. And she shared videos that she has collected over the time, as well as material from online resources to provide to her students to have a better understanding of the language, and even simple things for students to sit back and enjoy for I mean, for some fun for ASL Level 1 class. And the resources that we used in that classroom was our textbooks, our laptops, which sometimes is not available to many students, whether in college or high school. Um, but that teachers need to make accommodations for that. Uh, CD-ROMs, CD-ROMs to teach lessons and review material, as well as flashcards, which I actually made some a couple times throughout the semester for students to practice their uh, signing by describing a object or even count numbers. Um, Students also were given other material such as uh, pictures to describe. That also went with the flashcards. And other objects such as games and activities, which also we used in language lab to talk. It used to have students drawn into that activity. We had games such as Guess Who that helped with describing objects and people and places, of, as well as games such as dominoes, and we used Pictionary, and that was really fun. Um, Another uh, topic that was discussed in programs design was who are the teachers and what special needs they must have in the way of degrees. And a lot of teachers who come and teach American Sign Language are teachers who graduate with bachelors, and majority of them have several years of ASL under their belt. There are some rare cases of teachers who enter uh, teaching American Sign Language by having one or two courses of American Sign Language, and a lot of that is frowned upon because not a lot of them know about uh, ASL as well as deaf culture as deeply as they should know. And that is a big issue. Um, but school systems, especially, are trying to not have teachers go into teaching ASL if they have not that many qualifications and certifications to teach ASL. But teachers also are many of the teachers who do enter teaching ASL as a second language uh, have either a bachelor or master's degree in teaching ASL, and a lot of them go in besides having ASL degrees. Many of my teachers that I had in the past not only were ASL teachers, but they had interpreting license as well as uh, degrees in deaf education. And in the program design, it talks about the language it is to be taught, where the language is to be taught. And the I'm at this seems like a simple question, but it's taught in schools, whether it's high school or college. And it's actually just recent that many schools, especially colleges and high schools, are teaching ASL as a foreign language. And it was actually recently that ASL was considered a second language, sorry, a foreign language, because it follows the structure of a foreign language, and it's however not similar to English, which a lot of people misinterpret that ASL is basically English on the hands. Um, and schools such as my school and then different colleges like Radford University are providing ASL for students, um, because it's a growing language and it's now actually the fourth most taught language around the world. Granted that ASL is only in parts of the U.S. as well as parts of Canada. I'm sorry, the ASL is in Canada, parts of Canada, but in the U.S., parts of Asia as well as parts of Africa. But ASL is primarily in the U.S. So there's been an increase of the amount of people who know sign language, which is always a wonderful thing. And it's definitely a wonderful thing that many colleges and schools are recognizing it, so that students have more of an opportunity to learn the language. Um, and it also, last point of the program design is how much time is available for instructions. It varies for different institutions and schools. For my school, at Radford University, students had twice a week that they spend about an hour 15 in the classroom to learn material. So that was just about, like, students typically spent 3 hours a week learning the material, where it's 2 hours and 30 minutes in the physical class to learn about the material, and then there's the coursework that I meant homework that students use to uh, study for the home. I mean, at their home, which honestly counts to 3 hours of worth of coursework. And at Huguenot High School, where I'll be teaching, they will be it will be 90-minute classes every other day, and that is equivalent to 3 hours, not including the homework. But each one thing about Huguenot High School, they will be not only longer days, but longer times, but there are longer days, and the course of the material will be taught. Um, Unlike Radford, they had 14 weeks to learn this material and the whole textbook. But one of the challenges were to teach the whole textbook within 14 weeks. And sadly, we weren't able to do that because there was just so much course material to go over. And it was Miss Nielsen's um, job to teach students the amount of meant the knowledge of teaching. I'm sorry. She provides students the best ability to amount of information about ASL deaf culture, um, and and history to the students. Because honestly, if she just taught straight, mostly, sorry, if she only taught ASL, I think students would not have the ability to do wonderful to interact with the deaf community um, because like I said, we are guests in the deaf community, and it would be poor teaching if the instructor did not emphasize the importance of uh, being proper and respectful to the deaf community, even though that was like a 35 to 45% of the textbook. It's definitely has a big significance to deaf culture and the deaf community. But with the lecture that Miss Nielsen provided, it definitely went over the grammar, the syntax, and the linguistics of the language. And for many students, we noticed that some students were struggling. So we would hold days where we helped more students with grammar, and students often came to ASL Language Lab, and we actually made that part of their grade if they attended ASL Lab, that it was part of their final grade, and it actually benefited students to go every week for about 2 hours to practice their signing skills. And it definitely showed which students went and how actively they were involved not only in ASL lab but also in class. Um, but it depended on how much time was available for instructions from different institutions. But overall, I really enjoyed learning to see, and it was actually amazing that I found this book because most of the books I have about teaching ASL is towards deaf children, and I am looking still currently for more books provided by Gallaudet University. I'm always looking for more options, um, but I think this book, Learning to See, is an absolutely wonderful book, and it's actually really short. But it really got down to the point real quickly of what is expected of a class and how a teacher should perform perform that I'm sorry, how a teacher should teach their class and what's expected when teaching the ASL curriculum. But other than that, it was a great book, so I definitely recommend it. I'm actually going to look at different books provided from other ASL teachers. And yeah, thank you.